Manx Radio Sport.
Good evening and welcome to Friday Sport Preview on Manx Radio. I'm Rob Pritchard, here with you for the next half hour, taking the latest look at the sporting action on the island and beyond in tonight's programme. The Ravens are back. FC Isle of Man face their first game of the new NWCFL Premier Division season this weekend. We hear from their manager. Elsewhere, there's been success for the Isle of Man's basketball teams at the Inter-Island Games in Ynys Mon this week. There's been more success also for Manx boxer Mathew Rennie this month. We'll hear how he's finding 2025 so far. After a successful Island Games this month, we'll be discussing athletics and another milestone for the Isle of Man's junior handball players. That's all to come this evening. Very good evening. Welcome to Friday Sport Preview on Manx Radio. First tonight, this weekend, the Ravens return for the start of the 2025-26 NWCFL Premier Division. And the Manx side will begin this latest campaign on home soil when they host Little and Remica at the Bowl in Douglas at 6 p.m. tomorrow night. I've been catching up with FC Isle of Man manager Paul Jones to find out his thoughts and hopes on this weekend, and also what has been short but intense pre-season schedule. And ahead of Saturday's curtain raiser, I first of all asked him what are the main feelings he and his team are having ahead of this latest campaign.
Yeah, confidence, energetic, full of belief, really, especially after the last kind of couple of weeks. You know, we're really looking forward to starting again and seeing where we can go. I think we've had a really good energy through pre-season, and the performances we've had against some very good opposition in the last couple of weeks have really set up in, you know, to attack this season, hopefully from day one.
When we've spoken during pre-season, you've mentioned on a couple of occasions it's not been maybe quite as you'd like because of a few factors. Some players away on things like the Island Games, other commitments here and there and whatnot means you maybe haven't had the time you've wanted to and what you've had in previous times. So how have you worked around that? Just
accepted it, really. You know, there's not a lot we can do other than focus on the players who have been around, and that group of players have been really good and committed to what we're trying to do, and you can see that in the performances that we've had in the last 3 games. So, you know, we've worked really hard as a group that's been there consistently. The Island Games guys are more than likely going to be coming in next week in the main, you know, and they will probably add a fresh energy as well to the group, which won't be a bad thing, and put a few people under pressure to perform, which also won't be a bad thing at all. So yeah, it's just kind of really focusing on what you have. Sometimes as a manager, and you see it all the time in the professional game, more often than not, they're talking about who they can bring in to make the squad better, but you know, you've got to work with the players you've got to make them as good as you possibly can, and that's been our focus this pre-season, and so far I've been really happy with the group that we've been working with.
And on that point about the group that you've had, among them are some of the newer and in some cases younger faces that have been with you in pre-season. For these newer players, how much of a role do you think they'll play in these early stages of the season?
Yeah, they'll have a role to play, for sure. You know, just around availability for midweeks and weekends. It's still, you know, the summer and school holidays, and maybe some of the players that have been around a little bit or have families or other commitments over the summer. You know, it does kind of test the squad a little bit because we have no real hold over them, unlike maybe some of the other clubs who have players under contract or, you know, paying them money. Like we've in some ways trying to get them to commit to us and make sure they're available for 46 games, but we also know that our circumstances mean that is maybe less likely to happen with all the players. So, you know, the young ones have done really well. Some positions we're a little bit shorter on than others, so they may well need to step up, but I think everyone who's watched the last kind of 3 weeks of games has seen those players when they've come on the pitch do really well, and they're only going to keep getting better. So I've no qualms in using them and you know, relying on them to put good performances to help us win games of football.
Turning then to this weekend, and Little and Remica, who have a good record at the Bowl in the previous visits as well. You've spoken at times about how intelligent they are as a team and how hard they work and how much they provide a challenge to yourselves. So what's it going to take this time to try and get the better of them?
Yeah, attacking the game like we have done the last 3 weeks. You know, the players have set themselves standards in terms of how much they're working for each other, you know, committing themselves to the game plan and delivering that, being really solid defensively and minimising mistakes and making good clearances, and then being really clinical at the other end of the pitch when they've got opportunities. So, like, you know, they've shown that they can do it 3 games back to back against very good opposition. There's no reason they can't keep doing that in our league of football. It's hard because it takes a lot of concentration and focus and energy to do it, but we've shown we're capable of it. And, we have to play like we're playing against a National League side or a League Two side every game of football for 46 games. That's what it will take to consistently win games of football at this level. And that's what we're going to have to do starting from Saturday to give ourselves the best chance possible of beating Litherland, who I'm sure will be coming, looking to kind of carry on their kind of winning run coming to the Isle of Man. So, we've got to show that we're hungry. We've got to show that energy and belief and confidence that we've had since we've come back in from pre-season is there. But also understand we're not going to have it all our own way every minute of every game. So we're going to have to stick together and suffer and do the horrible stuff to make sure we see through those difficult moments. And, if we do all that and put all that together consistently over 90 minutes, then, we'll give every team in the league a run for their money. But, that's, as I always say, it's easier said than done.
That's FC Isle of Man manager Paul Jones there, ahead of his side's tie against Litherland Remacher, their opening tie of the 2025-26 NWCFL Premier Division season. Well, that game between FC Isle of Man and Litherland Remacher kicking off at 6 p.m. tomorrow night at the Bowl in Douglas. And if you're not heading down to the Bowl in person, we at Manx Radio have got you covered. We'll be bringing you full live match commentary of FC Isle of Man versus Litherland Remacher, myself and Darren Timpson, from 6 p.m. tomorrow evening on Manx Radio's DAB and AM 1368 channels.
Manx Radio Sport.
Elsewhere, it's been a memorable week for the Isle of Man's basketball teams, who've had the chance to showcase their skills at the 2025 Inter-Island Games in Ynys Mon. Or the ladies' team have gone on to win gold in their competition this afternoon, whilst the men's squad have finished 4th in a highly competitive group. Well, Isle of Man ladies squad member Becky Dunne told Manx Radio this week how valuable and enjoyable an experience it's been for the Manx players.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, it's been really, really good. What we really always like about the Inter-Island Games is it's the friendly games, and it's really great to kind of see teams that we've known over the last couple of years at games and being able to get together and play. We've been really enjoying it. We've got a few ladies and men who are here for their first time kind of representing the Isle of Man, and so all of them have had court time. Everyone's kind of put their talent out there, so it's been a really exciting week for everyone.
And for those new faces that you mentioned there as well, how valuable will an experience like this be, especially if they haven't competed in a tournament like this beforehand?
Yeah, really valuable, especially our women's team. As we know, we're still building ladies basketball on the Isle of Man, and so we currently compete in the men's league. So I think for our ladies to finally be able to go up against women and showcase what they can do against women, who are kind of their own strength and physical game, it's very, very different. So that's been really, really important, and they've really kind of put across their abilities, which has been amazing. And similar for the men, the standard across the islands is only ever improving, and so the higher level of basketball you're playing, the better and the more experience you can get.
And that leads me on nicely to my next question, the fact that you are facing, very competitive opposition out there as well. How much are both teams learning day by day about what it takes to try and win at that level?
Yeah, definitely. Practicing in pressure situations where the games are so tight is so important. Also, just learning around the other side of what there is to basketball. It's not kind of just the skill level, it's the physicality of the game. It's known as a non-contact sport, but I think that's definitely not the way I would describe it anymore. And so practicing against kind of physical players, ball movement, speed has been really, really valuable.
And on the ladies' side of things, you've touched on it already, that it is, the ladies' team is very much one that is still growing and still developing. And one of the last times we caught up with yourselves was the previous International Island Games back in Guernsey in 2023. Well, since then, obviously, a couple of years have passed. What do you think are the biggest ways that this ladies' squad has developed over the last couple of years?
I think we've brought in kind of younger players. We've got a whole new cohort of people coming through. Mary Harrison, she plays a lot of sport on the Isle of Man. Her face is very well known in kind of the netball world. And she's kind of making that transition over to basketball. And that skill and experience she has from netball has only done her justice. She's come miles ahead now. Her experience and kind of fast pace that she will play at has been invaluable for our team. And as well as that, Zoe Kirkham, it was her first Island Games 2 years ago, and she started this tournament campaign with an MVP, and I think that just shows over the 2 years how much she's developed and come on. And she dominated with 17 points from the stats. And so that's just kind of unbelievable the way she dominated inside.
And not just on the Isle of Man team specifically, but more generally on the Inter-Island Games themselves, really. This tournament is catering to the fact that basketball wasn't involved in the Island Games in Orkney this summer. And we see this over the years as well, that if a sport's not involved, the islands come together as well. So how much praise should go the way of both Ynys Mon as the hosts and all the other nations involved for being able to put this together?
Yeah, definitely. Massive kudos to Ynys Mon. They've ran an excellent tournament, the organisation, the lead up, and actually being here, the crowds that they're getting at the games is, it feels like we're at an Inter-Island Games. There's people in the audience, there's people cheering, the organisation, the game level. It's been second to none, really, and we really do appreciate them going forward and putting that effort in for us. And it means that continuation can carry on for teams that build in. We just got word that we are in the Faroe Islands in the next 2 years, so that's exciting. They're here at the tournament, and they let us know that, and so they're building as well, and it just stops that kind of missed gap of where you could use that practice and that experience, and you're getting your players involved in a tournament like this. It's been really, really valuable.
That was Isle of Man ladies basketball squad member Becky Dunne, with the Isle of Man ladies team winning gold at the 2025 Inter-Island Games in Ynys Mon this week. And you may have just heard it there, Becky, alluding to the fact that basketball will be included in the next International Island Games. The latest ones were held this summer, of course, in Orkney, and then in 2 years' time they'll be heading to the Faroe Islands. Basketball included again after not being included in Orkney this year. You can in fact actually see all of the confirmed sports which have now been announced for the 2027 Island Games in Faroe Islands. You can see all the details of that over at manxradio.com.
Manx Radio Sport.
Elsewhere, it's been another important month in the career of Isle of Man professional boxer Mathew Rennie. Just 2 weeks ago, he made it a second win in 2 fights in 2025 with a points victory over Harley Hodgetts in Liverpool. Well, in his words, he's been building the blocks again after suffering his first and only professional defeat in the sport in an English welterweight title fight in London in December last year. So does he feel he's got a shot at an opportunity like that again? Well, he's been explaining that to Manx Radio and also how he's assessing his 2025 campaign so far.
Yeah, it's been good. I was hoping to actually be fighting for the title the last week. I was wanting that to be a title fight, but for whatever reason, it didn't come off. Whether it was just not being able to find the correct opponent or they just couldn't get a title on the line. I don't know what the case was, but we're hoping to now push on for a title in September. Been a good year, especially after coming off my first defeat, building the blocks again. Got a good tough 6 rounds in July, so now I think I've done them blocks again where I'm ready for a title September, 100%.
Like you say, for yourself, it's been a response throughout the year so far to that that disappointment, that narrow disappointment, if you like, at the end of last year as well. So from your perspective, you'll naturally want to get back into those positions fighting for titles, but also do you have to learn a degree of patience sometimes that the opportunity will come about? It might just take a little bit of time.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's just in life in general. Sometimes you have to just stick it out. I don't know if you've ever seen the little photo, but sometimes there's a photo of someone digging, and then there's another one, there's 2 people digging, and one's turning back, and one's carrying on digging. And the one turning back is if you kept on digging, you'd hit the gold. So it's one of them. It's just being, consistent with it and staying, like you said, staying patient. And even in that times you are staying patient as long as you're working. If that makes sense. So you're making every day count. Whether, you're just in the gym training, you're sparring, and you're staying on top of yourself. So you're not just doing nothing while you're waiting for them chances. You're still preparing. In
the last couple of months, and I suppose going into your most recent fight as well, you did have a bit of a change in your corner, didn't you? Could you just explain a little bit about that for those who don't know?
Yeah, I'm now training at Four Corners, the gym's called, in Liverpool. It's with John Gillies and Michael Stevenson are the two coaches, but there's a lot more coaches in the gym too that all help out. It's a very busy gym, very active gym, full of top talent, and I just felt like I needed a change in environment where I had then people to inspire to. You've got like Callum Smith and Paul Smith and Stephen Smith, Callum Smith is an ex-world champion, and the Stephen and Paul Smith have got bundles of experience, and there's not just them. There's so many fighters down in the gym that are with different coaches, and we all bounce off one another, and we all give each other tips. And when you look to your left and you look to your right, and you see world champions, and they're all working hard, it only brings you on. And I think the people who you surround yourself with like a mirror, and if you're around successful people, you're probably gonna mirror that onto yourself too.
Looking forward then, whether it's in the short to medium term, have you got any particular plans, or is it a bit of a cool down period for you, or are you straight back to work?
Yeah, well, after the fight, I've just had a bit of an illness. So I'm just coming over the illness, just a little flu. Comes to the end of it, and then I did go back into the gym, but I think I went in a little bit too soon when I wasn't fully recovered. So I've had a little week off there, and I'll be back into the gym Monday. And hopefully in about 8 to 9 weeks, I'll be back out in action again, and this time hopefully for a title. So I think the plan is maybe to get one or two before the year. Hopefully one of them two will be a title, and that's what I've been promised. So I can only tell you what I've been promised, if that makes sense. So as I said before, hopefully the next 7 to 14 days I'll have an announcement, and it'll be some big news.
Well, we await to hear that from you. And just final question, like you say, if as you hope, there's going to be at least one title fight in there throughout during 2025. What have you learned from that last title fight experience that you could potentially take into something like that, would you say? I
think just doing the 10 rounds, I think that was a big thing that needed ticked off for your brain, basically for your mental state. I know I'm a fit lad anyway, and I've done the 8 rounds previously. I've done it with James Moorcroft, but doing them extra 2 rounds, they do make a difference. And I felt like maybe I put too much pressure on that when I fought back in London in December last year, where now I remember coming to the 9th round in that fight and thinking I've only got 2 more rounds left. Do you know what I mean? So I know I can do the 10 rounds, and I can do them at a very good pace too. But I feel like I've learned a lot in that fight, not just with the rounds, with everything in terms of the build up, in terms of the camp, the training camp, doing the weight a little bit better, maybe boxing itself, in general, how my ring craft, just everything. Every time you have a fight, the whole build up to the fight is an experience in itself. Every camp's a different experience. You always come over different obstacles. So every fight I've had, I've been learning, and I do think I'm at the level now where I should always be in big title fights. Do you know what I mean? I shouldn't really need any more of these 6 rounders or so-called takeover fights. I think I'm at a point now where every fight should be a meaningful fight, if that makes sense.
Manx Radio Sport.
Elsewhere, the recent 2025 Island Games once again shone a light on the talent the Isle of Man has across the board in athletics. Team Isle of Man took 15 medals across the athletics competitions, and one person who watched all the action unfold in Orkney was local athletics correspondent Dave Griffiths. And I caught up with Dave this week to get some of his thoughts on the Games, who from the island has been making headlines this week, and what we have coming up in the Isle of Man athletics calendar in the not too distant future. Dave, thanks for joining us. The last time I saw you was out in Orkney at the 2025 Island Games extremely recently now. There were so many different stories across the athletic scene from the Island Games. It would take us hours on end to go through every single one, but I know you're keen to maybe pick out a few that really did stand out for the Isle of Man among the many performances that you were impressed by in Orkney.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to really pick out one. I think possibly the athlete who I think stood out most to the Orkney public during the week would have been Krista Kane. She set the bar obviously on the first night with an incredible run in the 10,000 metres where she set a new games record, and the way that she ran that, just as Corin Leeming did the following night, was to front run to basically set her own targets, just decide what pace she was going to run at, regardless of what the rest of the field did. And I think that just sort of really set the tone for the whole week, really. And I think the whole stadium, it was absolutely packed that night, and I think she just sort of wowed them all, really. And then she did exactly the same in the 5,000 during the week, and again in the half marathon on the last day. So yeah, those probably were the standout performances. But having said that, I think Corin Leeming's performances in the 10,000 and half marathon were equally good. He became the first man to break the 30-minute barrier for the 10,000 metres, and incredibly, on a multi-lap, really hilly course with a headwind, he was only just over a minute outside the games record in the half marathon, which was absolutely extraordinary. I think outside those, obviously Regan Corrin, he ended up with 5 medals altogether because he was in both the relay teams as well. So he won the high jump, he got silvers in the long jump and the triple jump, and then he got bronzes as part of both relay teams. So he came home with 5 medals. I think aside from that, I think an athlete that's hugely impressed me over the last 3 or 4 years, really, and is just fulfilling all the promise that he's shown is Sam Perry. He's still only 18, and he's got so much quality, so much maturity. The way that he ran the 2 finals in the 800 and 1500 metres, he's got a kick like a mule in the home straight, which is just, it's such a potent weapon in middle distance. And he ran both the finals the same way. And in the 800, he posted the fourth fastest times ever run in the history of the Island Games. Unfortunately, he was just up against a really top-class athlete from Jersey, but Sam very nearly caught him. So, those are probably the real standout performances, I think.
Taking a look to now, and actually this week as well, one of the Isle of Man's premier track runners, if you like, has been impressing again, hasn't he?
Yes, I mean, going back to the 2019 Island Games in Gibraltar, we had quite a young athlete at the time, David Malarkey, who that was probably his first really big win in Gibraltar. He won the gold medal in the 1500 metres, and since then his progress through moving first of all to Leeds and then over to America has just been absolutely phenomenal. He's represented Great Britain in the European Team Championships this summer, and then he was selected to represent Great Britain in the World Student Games, and he won the silver medal in the 10,000 metres, finishing only a second behind the winner from Kenya. And there was a field of 28, I think, in that particular race of the best student athletes from all around the world, and for a lad from the Isle of Man to win the silver medal is just absolutely phenomenal. Ran the heats of the 5,000 less than 24 hours after that race, finished third, looks from the time like he cruised through to the final, which will be run on Saturday morning. So who knows what he might achieve in the 5,000 metre final on Saturday. It's just an incredible story of an athlete who he never seems to go through a bad spell. He just seems to get better and better and better.
The local scene on the Isle of Man now, a lot of those athletes who are involved in the Island Games, no doubt, getting a well-earned rest, however they'd like to do that. But also, incidentally, at the same time, we do have a bit of a gap in the local fixture calendar at the moment.
We have got a bit of a gap. It should have been the Isle of Man Track and Field Championships this coming weekend, but for a number of reasons, that wasn't able to happen. So that's actually now been postponed to the beginning of September. So because of that, there are actually no local fixtures until the No Rest for the Wicked series starts, which is the Isle of Man Marathon Championship and the supporting half marathon race, which takes place in Ramsey. Now that's on Sunday, the 10th of August. And the entry levels, as they tend to be for marathons and half marathons, have been absolutely phenomenal. There are 458 in the half marathon. There are 121 in the full marathon. And the No Rest for the Wicked series, which is 6 races in 6 days, which starts with, you can either choose the marathon or half marathon, and there are 116 entries for the full series already as well. The entries close on the 1st of August, so anybody that hasn't entered and particularly wants to enter the marathon and half marathon, go onto the Manx Timing Solutions website and you'll find links through that.
Manx Radio Sport.
Finally tonight, this weekend, is another milestone for the sport of handball for the Isle of Man. Local junior players are currently on their way to a whole new experience, which is seeing an Isle of Man Futures squad take part in a training camp at Armenia Ochtrup out in Germany. Well, going into this weekend, chairman of Handball Isle of Man, Mick Hegarty, spoke to Darren Timpson about what they're hoping to get out of this European excursion and how he feels the sport as a whole is developing here.
Well, it's a learning curve. I mean, these youngsters, we've been sort of nurturing them from Manx Youth Games that a lot of them started 3 years ago. Once COVID was out the way, we played longer than that, but COVID obviously made a mess of it for everybody. So they've been involved in a programme which starts with Manx Youth Games and then moves into the high schools where we run 5 extracurricular clubs in partnership with the PE departments in all the schools. And from that, those kids who are really interested come through to what's called our Futures programme, which we've been running now for, let's see, about 18 months. So this is the first big trip away because, we're not a handball culture in the Isle of Man. So whilst the kids love the game, what we want to do is immerse them for a few days in a handball culture like Germany, and where we've fortunately, over the years, have developed a very strong sort of relationship with a club called Armenia Ochtrup. We've been partners with them for 40 years, actually, backwards and forwards from the UK to there. So we're just going to, introduce our youngsters to handball in Germany, because in Europe, obviously, everywhere you play, handball is a massive game, a professional game, with Champions League and everything that goes with that. Big crowds of 20,000 in an indoor stadia. So this is the start of the journey, really, because we've already got next year's tour planned in Viborg in Denmark, which is a massive youth tournament called Generation Handball. So it's all part of a learning curve to develop our players so that they understand the game
from a European perspective as opposed to a UK perspective. And hopefully they'll become better players. And on the pathway there, we intend to produce some players who will eventually play for Great Britain.
How far do you think the sport on the Isle of Man can go with your futures programme, with trips like to Germany and next year to Denmark? Do you see the sport growing a lot over the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, it's growing and growing already. We've got a strong plan in place, which is, to work with PE departments, and gradually, handball will become part and parcel of the PE curriculum. That's our hope. Obviously, they've got to fit that in around many, many sports that they play at school. But what I can say is that currently every school has welcomed us into the partnership, to make that happen. Some of the schools are playing its own curriculum now, as some of the schools are playing it as an alternative, within games lessons and so on. And they have done for many years. That's not a new thing. I mean, I've been here for 35 years, so I know handball has been around a long time. In Ramsey Grammar School, for instance, they played it for years. But now we're becoming a bit more smart about it and working with the PE departments to see what we can do to help them. I mean, I've done some CPD with PE teachers. I'd like to do a lot more, so that they become familiar with the sport and better at teaching it. How far do we see it going? Ultimately, we'd like to have a men's and a women's team playing in the National League, probably in England. And, we can go as far as we want. It's like football. If we were to win the National Leagues, we'd then go into the British playoffs. If you win the British playoffs, you go through to the Champions League. So, there's a pathway there for a team. I wouldn't see many teams. I think the Isle of Man could sustain one team, but you'd need professional backing for that in terms of sponsorship and so on. And we're a long way away from that. But it's an ambition. And certainly, as far as junior players are concerned, we're already locked into the GB talent pathway with our futures programme. So our young players are going to have the opportunity to step up and come on the radar of playing for the GB teams, from the juniors, so under 17, under 19 boys, and under 18, under 20 girls. So I have every confidence we'll have 1, 2, 3 players who'll get into that programme.
And that's all we have time for on Friday Sport Preview this week. Many thanks to our guest this week, as always. And don't forget, if you want to find out any more of the Manx sporting news going on, head on over to the Manx Radio Sports Hub at manxradio.com. And if you want to listen back to any of this programme, it will be available as a podcast later this evening. And all that remains for me to say is have yourself a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend, whatever you're doing. But from me, until next time, it is bye for now.
Manx Radio Sport.